Hi, I'm Shannon Seaver, and I'm reporting to you in Jonathan's room, hoping to get some power and energy from the Force to help me explain to you compound statements and connectives. Our agenda for today is to express compound statements in symbolic form. So the first thing I want you to look at is this chart on the screen. We have four connectives here: and, or, if then, and if and only if. If you notice, the and looks kind of like something we saw in the last unit, which is the intersect symbol, but this one has a pointed edge to it. The or looks like a union symbol. If then is an arrow, and if and only if is a double arrow. What is a connective? Well, it's words used to join statements. Well, if you remember in the last section, we talked about what a statement is, a simple statement specifically. So what is a simple statement? Specifically, it's a sentence that conveys one idea with no connecting words. A compound statement is a statement formed by using connectives and two or more simple statements together. Well, let's see this in action. Specifically, let's look at and. An and statement is a conjunction. So let P and Q represent the following simple statements. P, it is after 5 p.m. Q, they are working. So let's write the compound statement below in a symbolic form. A, it says, it is after 5 p.m. and they are working. So if I wanted to write this in symbolic form, P we saw is after 5 p.m. So that's the P part. We have and we use the symbol that looks kind of like the intersect symbol. And they are working, that's the Q part. So here we have it, P and Q. It is after 5 p.m. and they are not working. Well, we learned about negated statements in the last section, but we already know that if is after 5 p.m. is a P. We still use the word and. This time we have not, so we're going to put a symbol like this, Q. P and not Q. They are working and it is after 5 p.m. This time we're starting with the Q statement. And is there. It is after 5 p.m. So it's Q and P. And lastly, it is not after 5 p.m. and they are working. So we have negated the first statement. So we'll have a negative P and Q. So some common expressions that use the conjunction, and these are all equivalent. It would all be P and Q like that. So it is after 5 p.m. and they are working is the one that you're familiar with. You could also have P but Q. It is after 5 p.m. but they are working. It's still the same symbolic form for this sentence. P yet Q. It is after 5 p.m. yet they are working. And P nevertheless Q. It is after 5 p.m. nevertheless they are working. The reason I'm showing you these things is because in English we can say many things the same way but with different words. So here you need to know that anytime you see any of these, they will always be P and Q. Be aware of that when you're doing your work. So, watch out. Not every and statement is a conjunction. For example, this is not a conjunction. Nonviolence and truth are inseparable. Even though there's an and there, it doesn't mean it's a conjunction. I can know that because it cannot be broken down into two simple statements. I cannot say nonviolence is inseparable and truth is inseparable. They need to be together in order to say that you can't separate them. This one, however, is a conjunction. Pizza and beer are not recommended for people with ulcers. It can be broken down into pizza is not recommended for people with ulcers and beer is not recommended for people with ulcers. The or statement. This is a disjunction. Usually it uses this symbol, like I showed you in the first screen. Let P and Q represent the following simple statements. P, you graduate. Q, you meet the math requirement. So let's write the following in symbolic form. You graduate or you satisfy the math requirement. This is part of the P that we saw up above, so I'm going to put P here. We have or. You satisfy the math requirement is Q. So it's P or Q. You satisfy the math requirement or you do not graduate. Well, notice that the second statement is written first here, so it's going to be Q. We have or. And this is a negated P, so it's going to be negated P here. The third connective we want to talk about is an if-then statement. It's a conditional statement. It uses the arrow symbol. So one thing you need to know is that in English, the part that's right after the if in the sentence is the antecedent. And then the part that follows the then part is the consequent. So let P and Q represent the following simple statements. A person is a father. A person is a male. So we're going to write the following statements in symbolic form. Notice we have an if. A person is a father, that's the antecedent. And in this case, a person and father is P. So I'm going to put P here. Then that person is male. So we're going to use the arrow because we have an if, then, and then we're going to have a Q. If a person is male, notice that in this case, the antecedent is the Q statement. So I'm going to say Q first of all. The arrow, because we have an if-then, and then we'll have the consequent be the P. If a person is not male, the Q is still the antecedent, but this time it's negated. So it'll be a negated Q. Then that person is not a father. This is also negated. So now I want you to take a moment to try this on your own. Pause the video and then turn it back on when you're ready to see if you got it right or wrong. Here on the first one, I got not P because it's negated, and it's the first statement here that we have above, and not Q, which is here. So we are using the if-then symbol. On the second one, we have if a person is a male, which is the second statement, then not P because it's negated. Just like with the and statement, there are many different ways to write an if-then statement. Here are some following examples that show it in different ways. If P, then Q. If a person is a father, then that person is male. That's the one we were just talking about. We can also say a person is a male if that person is a father. Notice it still uses the word if in it. So it's still an equation, it's still equivalent to Q. P, then Q. The following says, being a father is sufficient for being a male. Same thing. We're still having P, then Q. Being a male is necessary for being a father. So it would still be equivalent to saying if P, then Q. All of these do that. A person is a father only if that person is a male. And only if a person is a male is that person a father. So it can get rather confusing as to how to write this. And most of the time in our class we'll say if P, then Q. But sometimes you may see one of these other ones, and you may want to look back in your notes to see if it's one of these expressions. So it's probably important for you to write these down. The last connective statement I want to talk to you about today is the if and only if statement. It is a biconditional and it has arrows at both ends. So we're going to look at the statement, the word is set, and notice it's italicized because we're talking about the actual word set. And Q, the word has 464 meanings. So we're going to write a compound statement for this in symbolic form. The word is set if and only if the word has 464 meanings. So the first part was a P. Then we have the if and only if, so we're going to use the double arrow and Q. The word does not have 464 meanings if and only if the word is not set. So here you notice that we have it negated, does not, and notice that it's the Q statement first. So I'm going to write negated Q, if and only if, and notice that not set. It's also a negated P. Here, once again, we have a bunch of common expressions that are meaning the same thing for P, if and only if Q. You may want to write these down just so you have something to refer to in the future. So we've already talked about the first one, but we're using these simple statements for this example. A person is an unmarried male. A person is a bachelor. So, a person is an unmarried male if and only if that person is a bachelor. We could say a person is a bachelor if and only if the person is an unmarried male. So notice that these can be reversed. It still would be P, then if and only if Q. They mean the same thing. If a person is an unmarried male, then that person is a bachelor. And if a person is a bachelor, then that person is an unmarried male. This is still P, if and only if Q. They can be written in any order. Being an unmarried male is necessary and sufficient for being a bachelor. Or being a bachelor is necessary and sufficient for being an unmarried male. So let's review. This is the last slide. Remember that this symbol means and. It's a conjunction. This statement is the or statement, and it's a disjunction. This is the if-then statement. It is a conditional. And this is the if and only if biconditional. That is it for this taping.